Hello everyone, this is Solar Tiger again. Today is the 13th of July in the evening, and this is just a follow-up on the video this morning and to answer some comments I have had on my videos. So outside you can see the sun is shining brightly. It's been very sunny all day. It's very bright, and we've been working in the garden, so let's just carry on. Okay, today has been very sunny, and I have had the record amount of power from my solar panels. As you can see, or you'll see in a moment, I peaked at 160.9 watts from the solar panels. That is the highest I've ever seen. The current hit 5 amps from the solar panels. That's the highest I've ever seen. So far I have generated, let's just wait for it to come round, 9.98 amp hours. That's 350.6 watt hours. I'm going to admit now that I have been running my inverter and I was charging various things. So, to answer some questions that people have been asking me, I ran the power inverter all day and I charged various batteries, the power drill, etc. And I have been using my new 12 volt battery charger. It is working quite well. As you can see, I have put 10 batteries in it, and you can see that the ones that are finished have turned green, so that's a very good thing. While they're charging, the light is red, so it's very easy to tell when your batteries are done. I will say though that this charger gets a bit warm in places, and the batteries do get warm in it as well, but other than that it works very well. I have it plugged into my workbench, the socket's on the side just there. So to answer some questions that some people said. Okay, the person who said they wanted to design a system to run their bedroom, well, this is what I'm doing here. So this is what I'm recommending. You have a good sized battery bank. These are 3 100 amp hour deep cycle batteries. They are deep cycle. They're meant to be regularly discharged down to 50% and charged again without any problems. These are sealed batteries. I would only recommend that you use sealed batteries indoors. These are sealed AGM batteries. They were bought from eBay on the internet for about £125. There's offers to be had on eBay. If you struggle to find batteries, these were bought from a seller who specialised in mobility equipment. These batteries are used in mobility scooters, so that could be a source of batteries for you. As you can see, they are wired in parallel using thick cables. It's important to use thick cables to minimise losses and to ensure even charging and discharging in your battery bank. If you're going to use an inverter, this is a 300 watt inverter. It is small as inverters go. Remember, it's only 300 watts. Now it's wired directly to the battery through an amp meter, so you can see how much current you're using. Also, you should wire in series. You should also have a battery isolating switch. This should disconnect everything from your battery bank in case you have a problem or emergency, or you just simply want to work on the rest of the system. Also, in series with the battery bank, you must have a fuse. A fuse is an essential safety device. If you have any short circuit or malfunction further down the line, you will blow the fuse and disconnect the batteries, rather than have something overheat or catch fire. Remember, using low voltages, especially with power inverters, means you draw large currents. So large currents are a risk of fire if the currents get out of control. So make sure you have amply thick wire and the correct rating of fuse. Anything that you connect to the positive terminal of the battery must have a fuse for the safety reasons I just mentioned. So here we have 300 amp hours of batteries. Remember though that you can only run your batteries down to 50%, so you actually only have 150 amp hours. If I ran this inverter at the full 300 watts, I would have about 5 hours usage before the batteries were considered flat at 50%. So you'll see that running an inverter draws large currents and you need lots of batteries. Now I have three 100 amp hour batteries with an effective capacity of 150 amp hours, but I still only have a 300 watt inverter, and the batteries would be flat after just 5 hours at 300 watts. So as I said in other videos, low running power hungry devices such as vacuum cleaners, microwaves and things like that are an absolute no-no. If you tried to run those, or you had an inverter that would be able to run them, 1000 watts plus, then you would be drawing hundreds of amps from the battery bank, and you'd only have an hour or two's usage. And if you wanted any longer runtime, you would need that many batteries. It would be unpractical. So that is that. If possible, it is best to use DC powered devices if you're using a system like this. If you run DC devices, these need fuses too. You should have a fuse in every positive line. I have a fuse box and distribution panel to fulfill this, and a load isolating switch where I can cut off anything if I need to A, work on it, or B, I have any kind of problem. I also have a power meter on the DC side, so I can monitor how much current I'm using, the power and the voltage of the batteries. You should keep an eye on your batteries. You should never go below 12 volts on your voltmeter, or the volt reading on your meter. 12 volts is approximately 50% capacity, so don't go down that far. If you go down any further, you risk damaging your batteries. If you do go down that far by accident, or you left your load running too long, then immediately cut off the load and recharge as soon as possible. So it's handy to have a mains charger to hand in case of need. I am using an MPPT solar charge controller. It's the most efficient, but they are pricey. You can use a PWM controller. They are cheaper than the MPPT ones, and for a small system like you'd have in a bedroom, they are adequate. Outside, I have two 100 watt panels wired in series. That's because I'm using the MPPT charge controller. If you're using a PWM controller, then you wire them in parallel to increase the current, not the voltage. So that's the mains system. If you wanted to run things in your bedroom, a few AC things, I would recommend something like this. The enclosure is totally homemade, along with the panels. So that answers any of the questions. So that's the AA battery charger with 10 AA batteries in it. Well, 8 AA batteries and 2 AAA batteries. Someone asked me what I did with all these AA batteries. I have plenty more in this box here. Well, to answer your question, I use them in my lights. This one takes 4 in this one. I have these automatic PIR LED lights. They come on when you approach them, and these take 4 AA batteries each. I have 4 of these in various places in the house. Also, I have these portable speakers. They can run on an AC adapter or DC adapter as I'm using, or I can put 8 AA batteries in these and take them away totally, make them totally portable. I have some lanterns, they take AA batteries too, as well as this radio takes 3 batteries. You can recharge them in the radio, or I could take them out of the radio and recharge them. So that's AA batteries in the radio. I also have some ordinary torch lights that take AA batteries and various other things, so I need you go through plenty of AA batteries and the AAA ones as well. So that's why I have so many batteries. Also, this is the portable system I showed in the other video. Now this device is a light duty device. It's mainly for small DC LED lights and USB charging and running small fans. I do not recommend using an inverter of any kind with this device, as it is not made for that. The battery would run down quickly and the wiring is not thick enough. It was not meant for that. This is a portable device for low loads. It has a 55 amp hour battery, so you effectively have a capacity of just over 25 amp hours, which is fine for the usage I described for it. Okay. Oh, if you're wondering why there is no lid to the battery box, it's because I made a brand new one. It is over here. This one. Now the cunning thing I did with this is this is the bottom of it, and this is... Okay, I'm just going to carry on. My camera ran out of memory. I just cleared some stuff out so I can carry on. Right, so this is the bottom of the lid for the battery box, and on it is a block diagram of my solar power system. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of it. So this is the tool I'm going to use. I created it this afternoon. Okay, so at the top here there are the two 100 watt solar panels. I'm using an MPPT controller, so I have them wired in series. They have a maximum power voltage of 17.2 volts each, and there's 2 wired in series, so that makes an output of 24 volts nominal, although in actual use this can go up to the low 40s volts. So the maximum power current is 5.8 amps. That stays the same when you wire the panels in series. If you're using a PWM controller, you would wire these in parallel. So the voltage would be 17.2 volts, but the current of each panel would add together to make 11.6. So from the panels we go through a disconnect switch and a fuse. These allow you to disconnect the panels if you want to do some maintenance, and the fuse is a safety device. From there we go to the power meter that displays the watts, amps, amp hours, watt hours produced by your solar panels. If you need to reduce costs, you can replace this with a normal voltmeter or ammeter. Either one would tell you if it's getting input from the solar panels. We then come to the solar charge controller. It has 3 sets of terminals, a solar input, battery connection, and most have a load connection. This is a more expensive model, so it has a terminal for a remote meter, which is here, and this is it on the wall. You can't see very well because it's at night. Okay, from the charge controller there's a terminal for the battery through a disconnect switch and a fuse. The disconnect disconnects the batteries if you need to do maintenance, and the fuse prevents overloads because it feeds through to the load output. We come this way down to a main battery isolator that disconnects the battery bank from the entire system. If you need to do maintenance or you have any kind of malfunction, you can disconnect the battery bank. We have a main fuse which is 25 amps in this case. although for the rating of my inverter it should really be a 30 amp fuse, but that's what's there at the moment. Then we go to the positive terminal of the battery bank. It's a 12 volt battery bank with 3 100 amp hour batteries wired in parallel to make 300 amp hours. Though you cannot discharge your batteries to less than 50%, so I only have 150 amp hours that is usable. If we go back up, we have a connection to the inverter through an amp meter. This is my 300 watt inverter. There is a DC input and an AC output. This is a 300 watt inverter. We go back to the controller, it has a load output. There is a power meter for the DC side of things. Again, it measures volts, amps, watt hours, amp hours, etc. But also displays the voltage of the battery. You must monitor the battery voltage all the time and not go below 12 volts, because 12 volts is the voltage of 50% discharge. If you go below that for long periods, you will damage the battery. If you do this accidentally, you can cut off your loads and then charge your battery with a mains battery charger. If you go below the voltage, then recharge as soon as possible. We have a load disconnect switch, which disconnects the load from the rest of the system if we have a problem or we need to do maintenance. From there we go to a fuse box. I said earlier that you need to fuse all the positive lines to the battery, so this is where the fuse box comes in. I have actually got 6 circuits, though when I drew this I made an error and I drew 7. I have 6, and I have a 6-way fuse box, a fuse for each of the circuits, and the fuse box goes to a switch panel, a switch to turn on or off each circuit. From there you wire your loads through a distribution block. Again here I show 7, but I only actually have 6. Then we have all the load returns, and they go back to the battery. So this is my system. I shall just go over it again. We have an input, disconnect switch and a fuse, power meter, though you can use a voltmeter or an amp meter, to the charge controller. Yours may or may not have a remote meter. Most PWM ones don't. There's a connection to the battery through a disconnect switch and a fuse. That comes down here to a main isolator, a main fuse, the battery bank. Maybe you may only have 1 battery. I have 3, depending on how much usage you have. We go back round and we have connection to the inverter. The inverter must have a fuse, and it's advisable to have a switch along with the fuse in the feed to the battery. If you have any problem with the inverter, then the fuse will blow. If you need to do any work on the inverter, you have the main isolator to disconnect it, because whilst your inverter is connected to the DC supply, the output could be potentially live, so best to disconnect the battery before working on anything. We go back to the controller. We have the load output. Line goes through a power meter. You may just have an amp meter here. The disconnect switch for the load, which feeds a fuse box. Obviously, if you only have 1 or 2 circuits, you can use inline fuses in the leads. Though if you have several circuits, a fuse box is more convenient. I used an automotive fuse box since they're widely available and the fuses are easy to buy. You can go to any car parts shop, so that's a convenient thing. Then to the load devices, and then a back connection to the battery. So that is my system. If I zoom out, you can pause this point here for your reference, and this is how my system is. So thank you for watching. Hopefully this will be helpful to you. Thank you.